already very full. Therefore, I would not like to have another topic on there. But if no one would tackle this, and if we need it for some reasons, then I can try to put this in.
It doesn't say that we have to do it during KubeCon only, right? We can cover some part before KubeCon and then go to KubeCon with a little bit left at top and then do that at KubeCon.
So some items are reasonable anyway. For me, the biggest question is SBOMs, because it requires updates in our pipelines. Plus, doing proper SBOMs requires a lot of updates. It's easy to put a dependency tree for npm for Golang, but for example, what we include into Docker images, etc., it becomes a bit more tricky. So the question is whether anyone would be interested in this topic if we try to do it ahead of KubeCon. Anyone?
So what would the commitment be at KubeCon?
Well, actually, so we would need to prototype SBOM generation for Keptn.
Oh, okay.
I would say that generally it's a nice challenge. It also more or less, so for lifecycle controller, I think that we need to have generation SBOM of SBOMs out of the box, because it becomes a major requirement for adoption these days. But yeah, for Keptn itself, yeah, it would be nice. And my understanding is that we could more or less use the same pipeline.
For me personally, I'm the same as Thomas. Like, I've committed to quite a lot. So, I mean, if other people did the work and we just showed it, then yeah. But it's, I don't know if we can get other contributors to help, I guess.
So basically, yeah, I could probably create a prototype for SBOMs. I did it a few times before. The question is that how integrate it into the release pipeline. So I will need some help from Giovanni and maybe more to get it reviewed and landed if we target that. And if we agree on that.
I think in terms of container signing, co-sign, and so on, I can do a prototype, because this was a thing I did very often in the last year.
I thought we already assigned containers for Keptn.
I'm not sure. So
we recently added, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, then this is not a problem. And I think for SBOMs and so on, there are tools as Scribe and so on, with which you can create SBOMs.
Yeah. So the problem is to create right SBOM, because right SBOM for container image requires not just your code, but also what is included into the image. And for Docker, it has been a problem usually. I'm not sure how it would be for Keptn, but I can try. Okay. Well, I wanted to do some coding anyway. Why not GitHub Actions? Yep. So then I suggest we check in next week. So if we can do this foundation, then we can push it over. And for us, basically, it would be quite important because, yeah, the real situation right now is that we have no budget for Keptn at all in terms of cache. And sometimes cache is useful. So for me, yeah, participating in such projects, etc., would at least create a kind of piggy bank for Sonar FX crowdfunding so that we can put some items if needed.
And we can see what Andy's available for too. He couldn't make this meeting, but he did mention on the Slack channel that he's someone interested in doing a little work for it. So
I don't see the correlation to KubeCon because it says that it finishes on the 19th of October.
Yeah, so they do some prep work for that, and at KubeCon they
Okay.
have security slum. So basically, they suggest that during KubeCon, if you submit some patches, etc., we give you some swag.
Okay.
So yeah, it's, let's say, loosely related to KubeCon. So the announcement I posted, not KubeCon at all, to be honest, but yeah, they do some KubeCon promotion, basically as a part of Sonatype sponsorship. Yeah. Okay, so I'll take it offline, and yeah, let's see. So other topics we have on the list. So yeah, starting the governing board for Keptn. So we had a few discussions, but basically the question here is that since we're incubating project, we need to stop our formal governance for Keptn. We expected to do it within 1 year, I believe, after reaching the incubating stage. So I would like to kick it off. The problem for us is that yeah, if you want to have a board, we need to have people who want to be on this board. And for that, yeah, there is strong expectation, at least from me, that none of organization has more than 50% of seats. So basically, if we take a minimum board of 5 people, it would be that we need to find 3 people from outside Dana trees who would be interested to be on the board. And if you go with 7, we need 4 these people, at least. More than merrier, of course. So this is basically why I'm doing some prep work. Maybe the question for you, Brett, whether you would be potentially interested as an active contributor to CNCF and Keptn. I will be also reaching to our advisory board to see whether somebody would be potentially interested to be on the governing board. Yeah, so for me, the first question is to get a list of people who would be potentially interested, so to make it feasible. And then I will be probably, if we are fine, I will come up with a charter proposal. So we will need to define how we do the elections, and we will need to define all the charter for the governing board. It's not a big deal. Well, I mean, I did it a few times already, so it will be just mostly copy and paste for me. But the first question is finding interesting people to be on the board, participate in the elections is something a bit challenging. So if anyone is interested to participate and you're watching this recording, it's definitely a good time to step up. And I will be also putting in the community, so no need to answer right now, but just think about it.
For the record, Oleg, what sort of time commitment is this for people?
Well, this is a good question because how I see it at the moment. So Keptn should rather have open governance. So basically, regardless of whether you have a maintainer title, reviewer title, or whatever title, you basically are fully eligible to participate in all aspects of community governance. So formally, for those who are active in the community, nothing would change unless there is real escalation and real split in the community due to whatever reason. So basically, the governing board would be also taking care of code of conduct escalations and issues. Spoiler alert, we have never had it in Keptn, and hopefully it will remain the same. And yeah, secondly, yeah, if there is a lack of consensus in the community, for example, for some major agreements, so for example, Keptn LTS, scope, etc., so the governing board could step in, basically to build the consensus, or maybe even to enforce the decision if it's how the charter is written. So for me, these are the only use cases where we would need this board, and the rest, yeah, it's quite abstract. So I basically took the text from original issue created by Jürgen. But yeah, there are some items like driving the project roadmap, facilitating decisions, yeah, owning the charter, yeah, and various kinds of promoting adoption of project, etc. But all of that has no time label on that. So we would definitely introduce a kind of governing board meeting, maybe every month, etc. But I think that overall commitment would be just a few hours, maybe 5 hours per month or so, as tops. I don't want it to be a heavy entity that basically takes responsibility from maintainers to drive the project, because I think it would be rather a negative development for the community. So, questions?
Sounds good.
Okay, so just think about it. So I follow the discussion we had previously. So I create new topics as GitHub discussions because we still have no history on Slack. So I will be putting a bit more topics, including some controversial ones. For example, I wanted to discuss what is our roadmap for UI and whether there is a roadmap for UI. I said controversial topics. So yeah, this is what I'm going to put on the GitHub discussions. Yeah, so please feel free to participate. And actually I'll accelerate a bit to save everyone's time. So another discussion we have right now is Keptn Lighthouse service. So basically, it's a continuation of the presentation I shared with the community. And I would like to ask for permission to create a sandbox repository so that I could assemble a kind of roadmap ideas there. And yeah, I see your question, Giovanni. I will answer that. But yeah, so basically, I would like to discuss what Lighthouse would be, whether you want to embark on it code-wise. So right now the project continues in a no commitment mode, but if anyone is interested, I think that it would be nice to have a repository so that we can put some documentation, ideas, tasks there, and maybe start iterating there. And yeah, one item that it's basically probably the best way to discuss it right now is under the umbrella of App Lifecycle Working Group. So the reason for that is because for Keptn Lighthouse, there is also SLI and SLO service being created by the team. So I just want to build some alignment between these efforts, because for Keptn Lighthouse, if you look at the slide deck, it's also the intention is to build it around operators in the future. So basically start from Keptn code base and then move it completely to GitOps and operator mode for management. So it wouldn't be just how it's implemented in Keptn right now, but for that we need to discuss whether we actually do that, and if so, how it's implemented. So if everyone is fine, I will just proceed and create a sandbox repository, start building some items around that. And yeah, maybe at one of the next developer meetings, we can actually discuss architecture-wise how we align lifecycle controller and Lighthouse if it happens. Because
should this also be a working group as it is for the app lifecycle working group at the moment, and which is more or less responsible for this project?
I'm fine with creating that.
Because in the beginning there will be no code.
Mm-hmm.
So and everyone, if we talk about the Lighthouse service, will expect some code in a repository, I think. So we should have a working group which defines it, and we should have the implementation on the other side.
Yeah, if we agree to roll with it, let's say towards the prototype, it's definitely what needs to happen. Again, how happen? For example, one of the ways we basically split out bits of the Keptn core, basically doing a hard fork, removing all not necessary part. So it would be just observability providers. It would be bits of Lighthouse, API service, I guess, and maybe some other bits, but it would be just probably a fork of Keptn. Another approach is to take what is currently happening in lifecycle controller, so basically it's like slow service, because I guess you would be also hard forking the code base for that, right? Or not?
No, we have defined yesterday what we will do, and in the first step of the lifecycle controller, there will be no SLI or SLO service in respect of what's happening for the Lighthouse service, because it would not make sense to re-implement everything we have there.
Yeah. So whatever path we take, most likely it will be taken Keptn code base for the moment. Okay. So
Suraj, did you have issues about that too? Your name's next to this.
Yeah, I just wanted to. I think the idea is there, and Oleg has been discussing it since past couple of weeks, and I wanted to help out basically. So I wanted us to drive it forward, and maybe start with some sort of prototyping. I went through the OpenSLO repository, and I think we need to do you might need work to do there as well, and there's a lot of things involved. So I was like, let's get started with the simplest thing we can do and proceed with it.
Okay. So then I think I will keep tinkering with it. So again, as I said in the chat, it's a matter of priorities, because right now I want to spend more time on the Keptn lifecycle controller, documentation, demos, etc. But yeah, I will still doing Lighthouse on the back burner. I'm not sure whether I will be able to code the prototype quickly for that. Let's see, but yeah, at least some design work, etc. is what I could work on at the moment.
I don't understand all the details of the project, but if I can help with anything.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so, and then Mac, there are topics from you on documentation. So would you like to take it over? You're muted. Mac, you're muted.
There, is that better? Yeah, there isn't much to show actually. First question is, does anybody object to burying the old Quick Start guide and renaming what we now call Explore Keptn to be Quick Start for LTS? The old Quick Start does not work. The Killer Coda exercise that's in LTS has everything that's in the current tutorial and then some, and it's much easier. Would anybody object to that?
Fine with me.
Fine.
I think that for now we just need to rip out all that's not working. I think that it will be still important once we get to LCS to update what we had in the quick start guide to make it operational for 1.0. But yeah, for now,
why?
I think because Killer Coder doesn't replace all the use cases. So Killer Coder, for example, doesn't explain how to install Keptn. And full tutorial actually does it.
Okay. The full tutorial shows you how to install Keptn for a demonstration. It does not do how you would do a production environment.
Okay.
And see, I would say that the document, tutorials are very, very difficult to create and maintain. They're a lot of work. And I'm not sure that the tutorial approach is necessary there. I'd much rather get our installation documentation up to snuff and make it so that that has instructions that people can clearly follow. And I think we've got to start on that. We're not all the way there. That's what I'd like to do.
Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah, the installation got a bunch of improvements. So basically, for now, you would rather remove tutorials at all. So have quick start, have documentation, and basically all tutorials would go to the archive for now.
right? I mean, eventually, I'd like to have like a more advanced tutorial where instead of doing like a minimal SLI and SLO for go in and do something really interesting with them. I'd like to have some tutorials on more. All of our tutorials are sort of targeted at brand new, Keptn curious people. There are advanced topics that I think are worthy of a tutorial, but I don't know that installation is. I mean, the installation tutorial, you get into all sorts of issues, involved with setting up a local environment, and I don't know that that's worth the tutorial emphasis. I think it could be done more efficiently in documentation. So I'm going to put that as we need to make sure that we have good content to support people doing installation. We can decide later of documentation, right? The second one is, sadly, we are not going to be able to publish the LTS documentation under the new doc engine, at least not initially. I would like to go ahead and do the restructuring of the documentation, which is to basically get everything at the same level. So concepts and installation and all that stuff will be at the same installation as manage project and operate and define project, the stuff that is currently under the release specific stuff. I think I've done the writing to make sure that we're okay with that. There is even a possibility that we may be able to go to the system of having the URLs be latest rather than release specific for LTS. If anybody objects to that, speak up. The big question is whether we take everything that's under 0.19.x and for LTS pull that out to the same level so that we'd go down and have concepts installation, operate, manage, define, etc. showing on that homepage. And then under that, the 0.19, 0.18, the historical stuff. The other alternative is that we create an LTS heading on the landing page, and we move everything that's currently in 0.19.x plus concepts and installation. And I think there's troubleshooting, anything relevant under that header. So that is the question. We are but my hope is that, well, by getting this all at one level, it will make the move to a new doc engine much easier, that we will sometime in the not too distant future be able to silently move the LTS documentation under the new doc engine. But it'd be pretty non-disruptive to users. It will still look the same. And at that point, but when we get under the new doc engine, we expect to pull out the historical releases and have those on a drop down. So there'll be a drop down place where you can say older releases, and you can click that and select an older documentation set if you so desire. So I sort of put out on Slack. Nobody commented on my discussion PR, and Oleg said, let's move it into the community meeting and get consensus and go for it.
Yeah. So for the structure, I think that, basically for us, if we make some space on the root level for other sub-project, so like life cycle controller for sure, maybe Lighthouse, maybe something else in the future, like specifications. Which, so for example, currently we also have specifications which are versioned independently from Keptn. It would also make sense to eventually pull them into the documentation. So for that.
Wait a minute. You just, in another meeting, I asked you about that and you said, no, we'd never put those all together on the same landing page. Am I confusing here? Doesn't matter. I'll talk to you about that later.
I'm not sure. So basically, so for documentation, so regardless of the documentation engine, we may want to publish specifications on the documentation route. Then basically my proposal would be to go with version root for Keptn 1.0. So basically all the references, concepts which are currently on the top level would move along with other content under the version. and what is proposed in the current CAP for Keptn LTS. So basically, this version becomes a kind of living document. So unless there are massive breaking changes requiring a new version baseline, we just keep improving it. So for example, if we release Keptn 1.1, that probably includes some changes that needs to be documented specifically for this version. We just put a notice specifically for this version instead of creating a full copy of the documentation and maintaining 2 copies indefinitely.
I'm thinking that those sorts of changes could easily be incorporated just into the straight doc, which will remain latest and it'll remain the same tree. Yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a problem if there are new changes every month, so like we had before. But if we basically proceed with the assumption that Keptn after reaching 1.x becomes more stable, then yeah, I think that it should be fine. Mm-hmm.
So the main docs page, I will come in and I will not see quick start. I will see LTS and 0.19 and 0.18 and roadmap and news. And I forget all the details, but that's basically what will be there. And then under LTS, I will see the full documentation set of concepts and installation and operate. Is that the consensus?
I think so.
Okay. So I can proceed to do it?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Next week I will start and we can take a look at it. These things, I'm sure once we get it sort of done, we'll see something we don't like, but we'll have time to adjust. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's get
God,
started.
is it all me here now? Okay, 5 minutes. You know what? We can do these other 2 in 5 minutes. They are basically heads up, and I am standing in for other people. First is, speaking of tutorials, we have the tutorial page. It has 10 tutorials on it. I think the vast majority do not work, but Adam proposed that we make a little project. So we have a project created. There's a link there. There is an issue for each of them where we are asking people to adopt one of them to go through and do an evaluation, try to run the tutorial and record where it breaks, etc., and make a recommendation as to whether it should be fixed, redone under Killer Coda, or just deep sixed and never heard from again. And then we will proceed under that project to, we'll create other issues to do the actual work to implement that. Adam couldn't be here this week, but we just found, or yesterday for those of you in Europe. Hope is that 2 weeks from today for the community meeting, we will have some recommendations that we can discuss and make sure we have consensus on the disposition and move forward. And feel free to chime in if anybody is interested in them. We have owners for most of them. There's a couple of very interesting ones that do not yet have owners if you're interested in the project. The second one, Simon, was also unable to join us today, but he is looking into the new doc engine issues. We need to get an actual handle. We have some work done on Docusaurus for Google Summer of Code. We need to figure out what would be required to finish that off to the point where we could use it. We also have some concerns, and he's going to be investigating whether Docusaurus does have an add-on that support. It may not have the strength to do what we want to do. And it may be, I'm not a tools person. This was my impression, and Simon's sort of the opinion that the only option out there that does this extremely well is Antora, which means converting all the content to ASCII Doctor, and asking everybody to work in ASCII Doctor in the future. To me, I don't think there's so much difference between ASCII Doctor and Markdown that will be a real problem, but sort of a heads up. And again, I think at our next community meeting, Simon may have some more specifics to share with us. But and a warning, so. And unless anybody wants to discuss any of those, I think I'm done, and we've got 2 minutes left in the meeting.
Okay. So thanks a lot for the
Right.
update. And yeah, I think that we can slowly proceed. Okay.
It was a good meeting. We got through a lot of stuff.
Yeah. So unfortunately, I messed up the recording in the beginning, so I started at 10 minutes. But yeah, otherwise it should be fine.
Okay.
So thanks
Should
a
be
lot
fine.
to everyone. I will again bring up the agenda and the organization so that we make this meeting more efficient for everyone and actually get more participants, because yeah, historically we had something like 5 or 6 participants there. I basically invited the NetRace team and basically discovered that most of this meeting is the NetRace team this time.
Right.
So definitely didn't go as planned.
And
Okay.
we sat around for 10 or 15 minutes. What do you want to talk about? Well, I don't know. What do you want? Yeah, this was a great meeting.
Okay.
So
Thanks
good.
all.
Thanks all. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.